Hey everybody, John Huber here. You may know that I'm running for Board of Education, Worcester County, District 5, representing Ocean Pines. There's been a lot of talk back and forth in the media about a lot of issues. I have over 30 years experience in these issues, and I'm here to tell you what my position is on all of these. I'm going to have to do it in a couple different videos, unfortunately, because I like to be thorough, and I want you to completely understand. I don't like to just give you the political sound bites to say I support this or I don't support that. I want to make sure, if I do nothing else in this campaign, that you understand what's really going on behind the scenes here at Worcester County. First of all, I say behind the scenes, I have no insider information. I have not been to any of the closed meetings. I don't have any special privileges. So this is just based on my experience as a 30-year professional in the Maryland public school K-12 systems. Everything can generally be lumped into two broad categories. One is school safety, and the other is budget. We're going to start with school safety. The sheriff and the state's attorney, as you probably know, submitted a list of recommendations to help improve school safety. The board has basically agreed to these recommendations, and for whatever reason, nothing seems to be getting done. So first of all, I would tell you that as a candidate, I absolutely agree with these recommendations. I think they are very reasonable. They are able to be implemented with a little bit of communication between the two groups, which seems to have broken down. So what is all the sticking point? What is this all about? Why are they doing it? If the board is saying they agree with them and they're going to do it and they're not, why? Here's my opinion. First of all, there's a couple of things. In the MOU, which is the Memorandum of Understanding between the school system and the sheriff's office, the main contention is this one little paragraph, which is Section 5, letter B, number 3, says that the school system will promptly report to SRDs all crimes, delinquent acts, violations, et cetera. Well, they use the word crimes. School systems don't use that word. That's language that school systems don't use. School systems are not in the business of deciding what's a crime and what's not a crime. Then it goes on to say that and other, these things of the WCPS Code of Conduct as outlined in the Administrator's Guide to Offense Codes. So somewhere in the system, and I haven't seen it, there's an Administrator's Guide that more fully details what is required to be reported and what is not. The sheriff is saying that these things have been occurring and they have not been reported. The board recently said that since their first meeting in October, they know of no incidents of such nature. That would lead me to believe that prior to that meeting in October, there was indeed at least one, I would think, and then I assume it's been corrected. So anyway, the bottom line is that the school system does not deal with the word crime. They're not interested in using that word, and so that's probably a big sticking point, saying we're not interested in deciding what's a crime and what's not a crime. But the main issue here is this. The recommendations all come from a standpoint of increasing student disciplinary actions. It comes from potentially increasing suspensions, increasing those sorts of things. It doesn't come out and say it. Doesn't say, he's not saying, the two of them are not saying we want you to suspend more kids. They're saying we want you to report more crime. We want you to become, and that's going to cause probably higher suspensions. It's going to cause a higher referral rate to the SROs. And yes, it's probably going to cause a higher arrest rate. So the question then becomes, why is the school system so afraid of that? Well, here's why. Because in 2014, under the O'Malley administration, the state of Maryland underwent a major revamping of the state code of conduct as far as their K-12, Maryland's K-12 schools. And in that, it says that it went from a more punitive or punishment to a more therapeutic and restorative approach. So it came from they required the school systems to develop behavior plans and school safety plans and school discipline plans from a standpoint of encouraging positive behavior as opposed to punishing negative behavior. So if they start increasing a lot of these things, that's going to run afoul of what might essentially be a state level regulation. Well, it is a state regulation, or it is a state level regulation. The regulation we're talking about says school discipline should be administered fairly, equitably, and consistently in accordance with due process. Schools must not allow, this is the key, schools must not allow harsh or exclusionary discipline to disproportionately impact specific groups of students, including but not limited students of color, students with disabilities, male students, LGBTQ students. And it says when these disparities do exist, school systems have to make continuous efforts to understand the causes and reduce such disproportionality. So they are overly concerned that if they start implementing these procedures, this is going to run afoul of this state regulation. That's the bottom line. My personal opinion is this. The state regulations, if you read them in their totality, they do not say you cannot suspend kids. They do not say that you can't discipline kids. The problem is that it is going to increase them a lot, and that's going to put the school under a lot of scrutiny, the system under a lot of scrutiny from the state. They don't want that, so therein lies the reason why the sheriff and state's attorney's recommendations they're kind of dragging. My suspicion is there's closed door meetings with the board and some of the board folks and the board's attorney saying you got to be careful here because you're going to run afoul of these state regulations. My opinion, and I'm no legal analyst, like I said, I fully support these. These absolutely can be implemented the way I see it. And again, I'm no legal expert, but I can tell you the recommendations will not run afoul of this system in its totality. But what may happen is certain groups may then start seeing increased suspensions, that's going to raise the concern of the state level folks. So I don't see any reason why these can't be implemented. These are very reasonable, and I think they need to be acted upon. And I also say this, if they can't, if the school system's going to, if the board's going to say, you know what, we wish we could, but we can't because of this, then they need to come out and say that. But there's something going on here that's preventing them, and I can assure you, I will first one admit when I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that this is what's going on. You hear a lot of talk about data, about school data, about suspension data and all this. What does the data really say? Okay, the first thing is the sheriff came out with his thing and the state's attorney with their thing and saying all this crime. The school was very upset, the board upset, and rightfully so. I don't defend the sheriff and the state's attorney on this because they did mischaracterize that data as they called it crime data, and it was not crime data. It was school discipline data. And they got the school discipline data, I'm assuming, right from the school. So then the question becomes, what does the actual data really say? Well, let's take a look at it. First of all, if we're going to talk about suspensions in general, here are the total suspensions for, Worcester County is in the upper left. I included the other ones here because I wanted you to see, some of the comparisons of similar sized counties. Worcester County is, kind of in the middle of the pack in terms of size of counties in Maryland. The one just above us and below us, I believe, are Queen Anne's and Allegheny. I included Garrett because the superintendent referenced Garrett the other day, and Wacomico because it's our next door neighbor, and you always hear people referring to that. So here's some of the data. These are suspensions, just flat out kids getting suspended from school. Look at the difference in Worcester County between 2018-19 and 21-22. I didn't include 2021 because it was, or 19-20 or 2021 because of COVID, and it's just tough to use that data in there. So if you skip it and you look at it, look at the number of kids who were getting suspended in 17-18, 18-19, and then all of a sudden in 21-22, it goes to about a third or so. I'm not a wonderful math person, but then even 200, from 700 some to 200 some, and we hear all this talk about the effect of COVID and the mental health crisis. So what does that tell you? That tells me that something's not right there. Then look at Queen Anne's. They kind of jump around a little bit, but they don't have that huge, incredible drop. Look at Allegheny, a little bit more between 19 and 22, but then they're right back up to close to where they were before. Wacomico, they have been steadily coming down, then they bump back up. But, you don't see from 3,600 to 2,800, that's 800 some, but in a county that large, that's not that big. And then Garrett County, you would question about that. He mentioned Garrett County as well. Something seems a little fishy there. So what's going on here? What happens? Why are these suspension rates dropped like that? A lot of that has to do with different ways that they document suspensions. Yes, they do it. What they do, here's an example. A kid comes in, it's a Wednesday or a Thursday, commits some big offense. Parent comes to pick him up, says, he's not allowed to come back until we have a parent conference. We'll see you Monday morning at 9 o'clock. They send him home with a letter that says required parent conference till Monday morning. So the kid's out for 2 days. Everyone else thinks he's suspended. Technically, in the books, he's probably not. It's just a required parent conference. They do like in-school suspensions, which have now started counting as suspensions. But then the schools do all these other little things, like they'll call it a resource center, and they'll put him in a resource center for whatever, and they won't document it as a suspension. There's a million other ones, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying it happens, and that's how these numbers end up like they are. And then the superintendents can sit there and talk about how, we've reduced this and we've reduced that. But the people with their boots on the ground, so to speak, are going, well, he can talk about that all he wants, but I'm in the middle of all this, and it doesn't seem like it's getting any better, or it may even seem like it's getting worse. This is why. These are the kinds of things that they do. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the suspension data. Okay, let's take a look at this. You know what this is? This is just a little something I put together real quickly. Sorry for the simplicity here. Okay, we're talking about arrests. The numbers of kids, these is plain and simply the numbers of kids who were arrested. In 1819, there were 19 kids arrested. In 1920, there were 30 kids arrested. And in 2021, there were less than 10. That was, remember that there was hardly anybody in school that year. And then in 21-22, the first year back, went to 54. And now last year, it went down to 19. So what does that tell you? That tells you that for whatever reason, that may have been the indication to the sheriffs and the state's attorney that there's stuff going on here that they're just not telling us about. And then they want to make that number go down. And that's what they have done. Queen Anne's, less than 10. They have more students than us, than less than 10. Allegheny is a similar size county. They have less than 10 that are suspended, or arrested rather. Wacomico, you can see their 2021, they also have less than 10, but that's because of COVID, obviously. But their numbers have consistently gone down. Montgomery County's numbers have gone down. Anne Arundel County's numbers have gone down. All the numbers have gone down because all the schools are making a conscious effort to not have kids arrested. And that, ladies and gentlemen, I believe is a good thing. Okay? It's a great thing to not have kids arrested. We're not in the business of arresting kids. We're in the business of educating them. So here's a summary of all of it, if you will. I will support any program that holds students accountable and that will also hold the adults accountable, because here's what I believe. If there is concern that strengthening disciplinary procedures is going to increase the disparity between minorities and non-minorities, then the folks who are actually doing the suspending, the folks who are actually doing the referring, they need to be reached. They need to be held accountable. I'm talking about the principals and assistant principals. If it's school A, there is a huge disparity of suspensions and disciplinary actions of minority students versus non-minority students, then the person who's doing it needs to be held accountable and needs to be retrained. He or she needs to have their personal biases addressed. And the answer is not to lower the standards and allow such behaviors to continue. The answer is to find the people who are doing it and get them back on track, because I don't believe in my heart of hearts that they're intentionally doing it. But maybe, just maybe, there's some inherent personal biases for some of these individuals. They need to be rooted out. That's where it needs to be attacked, at that level, not at the global level saying, well, let's just not implement any of these very reasonable procedures, because if we do, it's going to cause an increase in this and increase in that. The increase isn't coming from the policy change. The increase is coming from the individuals at the school level who are making the decisions. So I support anything that's going to hold these folks accountable, and I may propose such policies and whatnot, and we'll see how it goes. So anyway, I know there was a long discussion about school safety and all these things. And here's another thing. The board is currently playing the word game. They're saying things like he's talking about increased parental notification. And I've said this before. He sits there and he makes this big, long speech about these things, these I love you guys protocol. And I told you that's what it was, if you've been following what I'm saying, the I love you guys protocol. That's not what the sheriff's talking about. That's not what the state's attorney's talking about. What they're talking about is if all heck breaks loose one day at a school and there's cop cars everywhere, they want information to go out to parents, tell them what in the world's going on. That's what it is. I love you guys isn't about that. I love you guys is about the major, unthinkable, catastrophic event where there are news cameras and helicopters and the school is, I don't need to give you any more details. You've seen them all on the news. If something like that were to happen, they're about reunification. They're about notification, that kind of thing. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about any given day at one of these schools, people ride by and they'll see 8 police cars sitting out front and they'll start poking around and no one's saying anything. That's what he's talking about. So anyway, I talked a lot. I'm sorry. I know I'm way over, but I only hope that you can at least understand this. Last thing I'll say is this: please call me. You may not agree with what I'm saying, because when I go to the board meetings and I hear people saying things like accusing the folks like me as like right-wing ideology and extremism, and that's ridiculous. There's nothing extreme about it. I expect to hold kids accountable. I want to hold kids accountable. I was in public education for 30 years, and this is, and look, I tell you, I know this stuff. When it comes to this kind of stuff, I know it inside out. So anyway, if nothing else, I hope what I've told you here was enlightening. And I look forward to hearing from you. If you would like to take me up on this and want to challenge me on any of this, absolutely. Give me a call. I'm not going to argue with you. We're going to have a professional discussion. And I may see it your way. You'll find that that's how I am. I like to talk in facts, and I'll tell you, I'm not afraid to tell you what I think. You want to tell me what you think? That's good as well. So anyway, I hope this helps. Thanks. Have a great day.